She was the sharp-tongued manager who turned Ozzy Osbourne into a rock legend, the fiery reality TV matriarch who built a media empire, and the woman who never backed down from controversy. But behind the glamour, Sharon Osbourne's story is not one of fame and fortune. It's one of heartbreak, betrayal, and unimaginable struggles. At 72, Sharon is finally confronting the tragedies that shaped her life. And the truth is beyond heartbreaking. Before she became a household name, Sharon Osbourne was simply Sharon Arden, born on October 9, 1952, into a world that was as glamorous as it was terrifying. Her father, Don Arden, was one of the most notorious music managers of the 1960s and 70s. Known in the press as the Al Capone of pop, Arden built his empire managing acts like Small Faces, Electric Light Orchestra, and later Black Sabbath. But behind his success lay intimidation, violence, and manipulation. For young Sharon, this meant her childhood was anything but ordinary. While other children went to school plays and family picnics, Sharon's life was filled with bodyguards, late-night parties, and whispered business deals conducted behind closed doors. She once described her home as a circus of chaos, where her father ruled with an iron fist. Arden was feared in the music world, not only for his ruthless tactics, but also for his willingness to use threats, and occasionally physical violence, to get his way. Sharon grew up learning quickly that love and power were often entangled with fear. She later admitted that she was terrified of her father, who could be charming one moment and explosive the next. Discipline often came not with words, but with aggression. Her mother, Hope, offered little protection. Their relationship was equally strained, and Sharon has rarely spoken fondly of her childhood home. This unstable environment shaped Sharon into someone both tough and guarded. Even as a teenager, she learned how to fight back, both verbally and emotionally. But beneath the armor, there was pain. Sharon would later reveal that she often felt invisible in her own family, dismissed and belittled by both parents. Her mother, she claimed, was cold and distant, offering no affection or support. In one interview, Sharon admitted bluntly, "My parents didn't like me. They never really wanted me." By her late teens, Sharon was already working with her father, learning the music business from the inside. But learning wasn't always optional. Don Arden expected obedience, and Sharon often found herself carrying out tasks she despised, collecting debts, keeping musicians in line, or acting as a buffer between her father and his rivals. She later confessed that she had witnessed beatings and intimidation tactics that left her scarred. It was a front-row seat to the dark underbelly of rock and roll. Yet even as Sharon absorbed the brutality of the business, she also absorbed its lessons. She became sharp, strategic, and unafraid to speak her mind. These were survival skills, honed not by choice, but by necessity. Still, the cost was heavy. Her relationship with her parents only worsened as she grew older. By adulthood, Sharon was estranged from both of them, a rift that remained unresolved until their deaths. The emotional scars of her childhood would haunt her for decades. She has openly admitted to struggling with feelings of abandonment, insecurity, and deep-seated anger, all stemming from those early years. It was this fractured foundation that shaped the Sharon Osbourne the world would later come to know. Tough, outspoken, and often combative. Behind the fiery personality was a woman who had learned to fight, because from her earliest days she had no other choice. When she met Ozzy Osbourne in the late 1970s, Sharon was still working under her father, managing his business affairs. Their relationship would mark the beginning of her independence, but also the beginning of a whole new set of challenges. Before Sharon could become a powerful manager, a reality TV star, and a media personality in her own right, she had to survive a childhood where tragedy was the norm. And survival, for Sharon Osbourne, became the one skill she would perfect better than anyone else. By the late 1970s, Sharon Osbourne was already deeply entrenched in the music business, working under the shadow of her father, Don Arden. But it was her meeting with a troubled rock singer named Ozzy Osbourne that would set the course of her life. At the time, Ozzy had just been fired from Black Sabbath, the band that had made him famous due to his spiraling addictions and erratic behavior. To most, Ozzy looked like a washed-up rock star whose career was over. But Sharon saw something else: potential. Their relationship began professionally, with Sharon taking over Ozzy's management after splitting from her father. This move was not only a declaration of independence but also a direct act of defiance against Don Arden, who considered Ozzy his client. It was a bold step, one that caused a permanent rift between father and daughter. But Sharon was determined. She believed in Ozzy when few others did. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Sharon helped rebuild Ozzy's career from the ground up, turning him into a solo superstar with albums like Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. She negotiated deals, organized tours, and managed the chaos that surrounded him. But their professional success was inseparable from their personal entanglement. Sharon and Ozzy fell in love, and in 1982, they married. The marriage, however, was anything but a fairy tale. Behind the scenes, life with Ozzy was turbulent, violent, and often dangerous. His addictions to drugs and alcohol spiraled out of control, leading to frightening outbursts. Sharon has spoken candidly about being physically attacked by Ozzy during his darkest moments. In one infamous incident in 1989, Ozzy, in a drug-fueled rage, tried to strangle her. Sharon only survived because she managed to press a panic button to alert authorities. Ozzy was arrested and later entered rehab, but the scars of that night never fully faded. Despite the violence and chaos, Sharon refused to walk away. She admitted in interviews that she loved Ozzy deeply, even when he was at his worst. To her, leaving was never an option. Instead, she chose to fight for him, for their marriage, and for their family. But that fight took a heavy toll. Sharon endured years of emotional and physical pain, all while presenting a strong front to the public. At the same time, Sharon's determination helped save Ozzy's career. While he battled addiction, she held everything together, often stepping in to make critical business decisions. Many in the industry credit Sharon with transforming Ozzy from a fading star into the Prince of Darkness, a global icon of heavy metal. Without her, it's unlikely Ozzy would have achieved the legendary status he enjoys today. But the cost of this success was staggering. Their household became a battleground, with addiction and fame tearing at the seams of their marriage. Sharon's children, Amy, Kelly, and Jack, grew up in an environment where chaos was the norm. For Sharon, the line between love and pain blurred constantly. There were moments when Sharon herself came close to breaking. She once admitted that during Ozzy's darkest periods, she contemplated ending the marriage, but something always pulled her back. Sometimes it was love, sometimes it was duty, and sometimes it was simply survival. In her own words, "We beat the hell out of each other, but it was never a normal marriage. It was us against the world." The cycle of destruction and recovery defined much of their marriage throughout the 1980s and 90s. Each time Ozzy relapsed, Sharon was there to pick up the pieces. Each time he spiraled, she was the one holding the reins, making sure the music and the money didn't stop. It was a partnership built on both love and suffering, one that few could understand but that Sharon seemed destined to endure. By the 2000s, when the world was introduced to the Osbourne family through their MTV reality show, viewers saw the eccentric chaos of their household. But what the cameras didn't always capture was the years of trauma Sharon had already survived to keep that family intact. To outsiders, she was fiery, outspoken, and in control. To those who knew her story, she was a survivor, one who had walked through fire and somehow come out stronger, even if scarred. Sharon's life with Ozzy was never simple. It was a storm of passion and pain, a marriage defined by both violence and loyalty. To this day, she admits that she never stopped. loving him even when he nearly destroyed her. It was this complicated, often heartbreaking love story that would shape the next stage of her life. A stage filled with fame, fortune, and even more personal battles that tested her resilience in ways few could imagine. By the early 2000s, Sharon Osbourne's life had shifted dramatically. After decades spent behind the scenes managing Ozzy's career and holding their family together, Sharon herself became a household name when MTV launched The Osbournes in 2002. The reality show pulled back the curtain on their chaotic home life, giving audiences a raw, unfiltered look at the rock and roll family. The show was an instant sensation. Viewers were captivated by the dysfunction, humor, and unpredictability of the Osbournes' day-to-day existence. Sharon, in particular, emerged as a star in her own right, witty, sharp-tongued, and fiercely protective of her family. Suddenly, she wasn't just Ozzy's manager or wife. She was Sharon Osbourne, a cultural icon. But the fame came at a cost. The constant cameras and exposure magnified tensions within the household. Sharon's children, Kelly and Jack, struggled under the spotlight, facing addiction issues and mental health battles of their own. Sharon often found herself torn between her role as mother, manager, and public figure. While the world saw a glamorous, larger-than-life personality, behind the scenes, Sharon was juggling pain, responsibility, and an ever-growing sense of exhaustion. In 2002, at the very height of her newfound fame, Sharon received devastating news. She had been diagnosed with colon cancer. The diagnosis was a crushing blow, yet Sharon refused to step away from the spotlight. She continued filming the Osbournes while undergoing chemotherapy, allowing cameras to capture her most vulnerable moments. This decision shocked many, but Sharon insisted on being open about her fight, using her platform to raise awareness. Her battle with cancer was grueling. At one point, she was so weak that she could barely walk across the room, yet her determination never wavered. In interviews, Sharon admitted she was terrified of leaving her children without a mother, but she channeled that fear into strength. Against the odds, she survived and went into remission, emerging even stronger and more determined than before. For many fans, Sharon became not just a reality star, but a symbol of resilience and survival. Still, survival didn't mean peace. The years that followed were marked by betrayal, heartbreak, and public scandal. In 2016, Sharon's world was shattered when she discovered that Ozzy had been unfaithful, engaging in a long-term affair with his hairstylist. The revelation nearly destroyed their marriage. Sharon spoke openly about the pain, describing how she felt humiliated and broken by the betrayal. After more than 3 decades of loyalty, enduring his addictions and violence, Sharon felt gutted by the knowledge that Ozzy had chosen someone else. For a brief period, Sharon walked away, announcing their separation. She admitted that she couldn't see a future with him. But, as had happened so many times before, love complicated the story. After therapy and public apologies from Ozzy, the couple reconciled. Sharon described it as rebuilding trust from the ground up. But the scars from that betrayal never fully healed. Meanwhile, Sharon's career flourished outside of her marriage. She became a co-host on The Talk, where her outspoken opinions made her both beloved and controversial. Sharon thrived on the panel for over a decade, often clashing with co-hosts and making headlines for her blunt commentary. But in 2021, controversy erupted when Sharon defended her friend Piers Morgan during the fallout of his comments about Meghan Markle. The heated on-air exchange led to accusations of racism and a very public fallout. Sharon was eventually forced to leave the show, a departure she later described as one of the darkest moments of her professional life. The incident left Sharon devastated. She felt abandoned by colleagues and unfairly vilified by the media. In interviews, she admitted that she spiraled into depression afterward, questioning her place in the industry and in public life. For someone who had fought her entire life to build a voice and reputation, the loss cut deep. Amid these public battles, Sharon also faced private pain. Her children's struggles with addiction mirrored the chaos of their father's life, forcing Sharon to relive the same cycle she had endured with Ozzy. She poured herself into supporting Kelly and Jack through rehab and recovery, all while maintaining her own public image as a strong, unshakable matriarch. By her 70s, Sharon Osbourne had lived through cancer, betrayal, professional scandals, and relentless media scrutiny. What the world saw was a sharp-witted television personality and a survivor. What Sharon herself carried was a lifetime of scars, many hidden beneath her trademark humor and defiance. As she once admitted in an interview, "I've survived cancer, near-death experiences, heartbreak, betrayal, and public humiliation. And I'm still standing. But don't ever think for a moment that it hasn't left its mark on me." This mixture of strength and sorrow defined Sharon's later years. Fame had given her wealth, power, and recognition. But it had also magnified her suffering and left her vulnerable to betrayals both public and private. The tragedy of Sharon Osbourne wasn't only in what she endured, it was in how much she had to sacrifice to keep moving forward. At 72, Sharon Osbourne stands at a crossroads, one that reflects both the incredible heights she has reached and the painful depths she has endured. The world may still recognize her sharp tongue, her fiery wit, and her glamorous presence, but behind the polished image lies a woman marked by decades of heartbreak. In recent years, Sharon has faced a series of health scares that reminded her, and those who love her, just how fragile life can be. In 2022, she collapsed suddenly while filming a television special in California, sparking headlines and sending fans into a panic. Sharon later downplayed the incident, but those closest to her knew it was another sign of the toll years of stress, illness, and emotional strain had taken on her body. Privately, Sharon has also struggled with depression, something she has spoken about candidly. Despite her reputation as one of television's toughest personalities, she admitted to having moments of despair so deep that she questioned whether she could go on. For someone who has spent her entire life projecting strength, confessing to vulnerability was one of her most courageous acts. Her marriage to Ozzy, though still intact, continues to be a complicated bond. They have endured infidelity, addiction, public humiliation, and near divorce, yet Sharon remains by his side. Some see it as proof of her unwavering love. Others view it as the price of loyalty. Sharon herself has admitted that their relationship is far from perfect, but she insists it is real. "We've been through hell together," she once said, "but we've also shared more love than most people ever know. That's what keeps us going." Her children remain at the center of her heart, though their struggles have weighed heavily on her. Watching Kelly and Jack navigate addiction and personal turmoil has been a painful echo of Sharon's own battles with Ozzy decades earlier. She has often said that being a mother is her proudest role, but it is also the one that has left her most vulnerable. Professionally, Sharon has stepped back from the constant glare of mainstream television, choosing instead to focus on smaller projects and her family. Her departure from the talk in 2021 was more than just a career shift. It marked the end of an era where she was one of daytime television's most recognizable and controversial voices. The fallout left her bruised, not just financially, but emotionally, as she struggled to reconcile her years of loyalty to the show with the manner in which she was pushed out. Even so, Sharon's resilience remains her defining trait. She has never shied away from speaking the truth, no matter the cost. She has confronted cancer, betrayal, public disgrace, and personal loss with an honesty that few celebrities dare to show. And while some see her as tough to a fault, others admire her for never backing down, even when the odds were stacked against her. Today, Sharon Osbourne's story is both inspiring and heartbreaking. Inspiring because she embodies survival, a woman who refused to be silenced or destroyed by the chaos of her life. Heartbreaking because survival often came at a devastating price, leaving scars that time will never fully heal. At 72, Sharon continues to live with the consequences of a lifetime in the spotlight. Her health is fragile, her trust scarred, and her heart heavy with the weight of battles fought both in public and in silence. Yet even now, she remains a figure who commands attention, not for perfection, but for her humanity. For fans, Sharon Osbourne will always be the woman who stood beside the Prince of Darkness, who laughed through tears on reality TV, who told the world when she was broken and fought her way back up again. But for Sharon herself, the truth is far more complicated. Hers is a story of survival, yes, but also of tragedy. One that reminds us that even the strongest among us carry wounds that never truly heal.